Hello, everyone. It is very excited to be here today. Hope you're all as excited as I am to learn more about CLAD, the community hackathon as a whole. So just give it a few minutes, wait for some more people to show up, and then we'll hop into it. But just as we're going over things today, feel free to just chuck your questions in the chat as we go along, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them when needs be. But yeah, how's everyone's days going today? Anyone been up to anything interesting so far? Yeah, just give it another 2 or 3 minutes and then we'll jump into it. Really excited to be chatting to you all though about CLAD. I've used it a bunch the past few weeks ever since it was announced, and every single time I use it, I think I'm just more and more impressed, which it's such a good and useful tool. So hopefully you'll all get that excitement towards it as well. Okay, you know what? Looks like we've got about, quite a few people in here. So without further ado, let's just get started. So this is for the Specs CLAD Hackathon, and this is week 1 with a focus on organize as the theme. So we're going to cover a bunch of things today. Mostly we're going to cover what is CLAD as a whole. We're going to go over that, what it is, how you can use it, different sort of use cases of it, all of that. Then we're going to cover the setup. Then we're going to look at some strengths and limitations of CLAD. And we're going to talk in a bit more detail about the actual hackathon as a whole. So without further ado, what is CLAD? I'm sure you've seen the word CLAD everywhere recently, especially if you're frequent on all things Snap AR and specs. So yeah, what is CLAD? So CLAD stands for the Closed Loop Agentic Development. And it's essentially a suite of agents and skills which allow AI to create in Lens Studio kind of experiences, spatial experiences and lenses optimized for specs. So the C stands for closed, which means the AI is able to work by itself. So this is fantastic. It does mean that you are able to give CLAD just one prompt and it's able to work by itself to create a full lens, which is super, super impressive. The L stands for loop. So this means it's able to work through a full development loop, like you have a team of people, but just as a set of agents. So instead of it just doing, just building or maybe just being able to handle design, it's able to do the full thing. So it can design your lens and your project, then move on to building it, actually creating the code, implementing it, and then it's able to test it, especially through things such as Leaf, which I'll touch on more a bit later. And then once it's tested it, if it finds maybe something isn't working as intended, it's able to go back to design or build and go again. So it's great. It's like a full loop, which is amazing. And then the A stands for agentic. So it's able to divide tasks and assign them to dedicated agents. Maybe there's one agent which is super good at generating 3D models or creating sound effects. If so, it's able to pass that task onto that agent and get that stuff done by itself. And then D is development. So this is where CLAD, I think, really stands out. It can develop by itself or with you. So you can really make CLAD work for your sort of workflow. So it is possible to give it one prompt and it's able to produce a full lens from there. Or if you prefer to be a bit more hands-on with your programming and development, you can get CLAD to just do certain tasks. Maybe you just want to make a 3D model or just make some audio for your lens. It can do that too. So however you work, CLAD can fit into your workflow, which is something I really like, because I've been using CLAD in a bunch of different ways so far. So often I'll give it just one complete prompt to get a full prototype. But at the same time, I also quite like working almost like a pair programmer. I'll do a little bit, and then when I get stuck, I'll hand it over to CLAD and go back and forth. So however you work, CLAD can fit around you. So down here, there's a little diagram kind of showing how it works at quite a high level. So we have CLAD, which is a set of skills and agents, and then we pair this with an AI harness. So Claude, Codex, and Cursor, which we'll touch on a bit later. And then through this, it connects through an MCP server to Lens Studio to allow it to insert things into the scene, check things are running, write the scripts, all of that. And then from Lens Studio, you're able to test on the specs device. Obviously not right now, because the specs aren't out yet, but in the future you'll be able to. And currently the Lens Studio simulator is really, really good for most of the things. So you're fine there. Now, agents within CLAD. So I think this was probably the most standout thing to me. So I have quite a developer-based background. I'm very happy with programming, code, all of that. But I'm not as good when it comes to things such as VFX, 3D models, or the pretty stuff, as I like to call it. So what blew me away about CLAD was its ability to create things like shaders, 3D models by itself, and pretty good results at that, which we'll show you in some live examples in a bit. So CLAD can create a lot more than just basic code. Like I said, VFX, shaders, 3D models, and it can test. I'd wanted spatial unit tests for ages. And through CLAD with LEAF, which stands for Lens Evaluation Automation Framework, you essentially get spatial unit tests within Lens Studio. So this is just another thing that just makes CLAD stand out that wee bit more. It's honestly such a great tool. And there's so many more dedicated agents within CLAD. So one prompt is enough to create a full lens. Maybe you just want a basic weather lens to show you the weather in your current location. You can do that. You can type out a simple prompt, just like build me a lens that shows me the weather in my current location, hit enter, go away, grab a coffee, come back, and we made for you. Or sometimes you might just need help with one specific aspect. Maybe you just want a mesh, so you can do /build mesh. And it will describe what you want. Maybe you want a cloud 3D model, and it will create that. Or maybe you want some SFX, some sound effects. So you do build SFX, and it could create rain noise. Let's say you're making a weather lens. Or even things just as updating basic lens packages to very specific versions. You can do that too from the individual agents, which is just great. It saves a lot of time with things like this. Now, so CLAD works with your favorite AI tools. The main three being Codex, Claude Code, and Cursor. If you're just getting started though, this is your first time using CLAD, the one I would personally recommend and the one that I use when using CLAD is Cursor. In my opinion, it's just one of the easier ones to get set up with, and it does have a free tier as well, so you can get started with that. Quite useful. Perfect. So now that we've covered sort of what CLAD is and what it can do, let's talk about setting it up, and we'll go through a live example so you can see it all working. So first things first, you're going to want to make sure you've got Lens Studio installed, and you need to make sure it's version 5.22 or greater. Any version before won't work, so ensure it's version 5.22 or newer. And you also need the Cursor app. And then the little QR code in the corner there, that will take you to the documentation for setting up Cursor with CLAD, which we will go over live now. So first things first, I have Cursor open here. And if I go, so when you open it for the first time, once you've signed into your account, it'll look a bit like this. And then if we go into customize, we can see our sort of plugins and MCP. These are the two we're going to use most. So as you can see right now, no plugins available, and I do have an MCP because I was doing it earlier, but we'll go over that again. So first things first, what we want to do is we want to navigate to your file app and just want to make a kind of folder for CLAD stuff. So that's what I've done, just call it CLAD lenses. And within here, I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this extensions, and I will open that. And then if I go to the Cursor setup page here, we've got all different steps. So have we installed Lens Studio? Yes. Have we installed Cursor? Yes. And we do have Cursor open. So then we need to install the plugin. So what we do is we grab this URL here or command here, and we can copy that. And then we can head back into our file app, and we can just open terminal app. And it will clone in and download this little folder called LS extensions. So this is what we'll need to give to CLAD, so it's able to have sort of reference to, this is what we give Cursor, so it has reference to all the CLAD stuff. A bunch of stuff in here, we don't have to worry about that. So now we can open this again, and let's go back to the website. And then there's just two more commands we've got to run, and that's us running. So this first one, what it does is it makes a directory in your user folder to check that the Cursor plugin folder exists. If it does exist, it doesn't do anything. So I can run this. There we go. Nothing happens because it already exists. And then what we need to do is we do the second one, which just copies the repo we just downloaded into a local plugin folder called LSCLAD. So back we go into there, we can run that. And then to check that worked, all we need to do is we just need to open up cursor, and then we should see LSCLAD. And when we press it, we should see a bunch of things. So like we've got a bunch of different skills, a bunch of different subagents, all of that. Amazing. So next step is we want to open up Lens Studio, which I have up here. And you'll be greeted with a screen such as this. So what we want to do is we want to open up specs, and then we just want to slide the. So we can open that, and then it will load up here. Just need to wait on it to load. Perfect. So I'm thinking for our first example, we're just going to make a very basic weather lens. And then we'll kind of iterate on this throughout, and then we'll try another little sample, a bit more related to this week's theme later on. So perfect. Let's save this. So I'm just going to pop it in my CLAD folder. We're just going to call this weather example. And then we just need to complete our final step, which is going up here, and we're going to want to go to AI Assistant, MCP, and then configure server. Should be running by default, but if not, just press start server. And we want to go and we want to copy the MCP config. It copies it to your clipboard automatically. And then if we go back over to cursor, we can go into MCPs, add new MCP server. If you're doing it for the first time, copy and paste that in there, hit save, and then at the top, we should see this. And then once we reload it, it will connect. Once it's green, that means the MCP stuff is set up. So that's all the cursor stuff set up. We're ready to go. So we can go from there. So now we want to open our folder where our weather lens is located. So we can go into CLAD, weather example, and we can open that there. Perfect. So let's just create a new agent and let's type in our prompt. So I'm going to go with, we're going to make a basic weather lens. And I think we want it to show the current temperature and probably the condition for the current city we're in. And then it'd be really cool if there's a button to toggle the time of day. So we can have our prediction for during the day and at night. I think that'd be pretty cool, especially if it's using real live data. So let's just type in a detailed prompt so we get that. So build me a basic weather lens. It should show the current and condition for my current city. There should be a button to toggle the time of day so it will give the prediction for during the day or at night. When an editor, expose a field for a city name. By default, use Edinburgh, that's where I'm currently based, and then use real data. And then let's get that running. You can choose your different agents. Personally, I quite like Composer or different LLMs. We'll go with Composer. That's what I've had some really good results with. So we'll go with that. Now, you may notice within that prompt, I did specify, when an editor, expose a field for a city name, by default use Edinburgh. So I'll touch on that a bit more in a little bit, but essentially there's some things that don't work fully within the editor, such as getting your GPS location. So some of them, when an editor, it's best to have a little fallback. But again, we'll cover all of that in a little bit. So it's running now. Everything seems to be going well. Yeah, perfect. So let's go back to our slides while it's doing that. Hopefully, when we come back, we have a little project waiting for us. So strengths and limitations. I think this is a really good one to cover. So the overall strengths, I'd say, is the ability to create more than just code. This is so valuable, in my opinion. The ability for it to create 3D models, designs, SFX. Again, I really can't recommend this enough. It's so great for being able to produce a full project instead of just write the code for it. And the ability to work by itself. It works really well, especially just based off one prompt. It's amazing the sort of detailed results you can get just from that. Testing, we'll show a live example of the testing once the initial lens is created using Leaf. And this is really good for testing things like complex hand gestures and movements, all within the editor, especially without being able to test on device. Makes it a breeze. And as well, the iterative development, the ability to just work with CLAD the way you want is phenomenal. So regardless of how you code or how you like to make your projects, you can pick and choose and work with CLAD the way you want to. Now, for things to consider, the first one is your sort of the capability knowledge. So if you're a complete beginner, you've not touched Lens Studio, you've not touched specs before, what I would recommend doing before even touching CLAD is going through a bunch of the examples in the specs homepage. And this will give you a really good understanding for what things can work in Lens Studio, how things do work in Lens Studio, how to use things maybe like the remote service gateway. Because what I find when I'm prompting with CLAD is the more detail I give it, the more suggestions I give it, and individual sort of Lens Studio APIs, capabilities I want it to use, the better the finished product. So I would recommend just picking 2 or 3 of the samples, walking through them, understanding how it works, trying it in the simulator, and then going to CLAD for your first time to give it some prompts from there. Another thing to think about is colors. So due to spectacles or specs having holographic waveguide displays, which essentially means light projected on, and that's how you see your digital content, black doesn't really show up at all. So avoid blacks, and maybe use things like grays, or try a completely different color theme. Often lighter colors feel a bit more punchy in my opinion, so it's worth considering that. And as well, there's also a few editor limitations. So there's a few different things which work on specs on the actual device, which don't really work in editor. So one of those being like GPS. So obviously there's no GPS, so it can't work out where I am. So for that case, you have to give it a city. Other things such as motion controllers and actually camera does work. There's a bunch of things which maybe don't work quite the best in editor. So just keep these in mind. Often the API can kind of help you understand if they'll work in editor or not, but it's just something to be aware of. And let's go back, see how it's getting on. Okay, it is writing some of the script inputs. Perfect. So we should be almost there soon. How can we test hand gestures in preview? So at the moment, the easiest way I've found to do it is writing some Leaf unit tests, which we'll go over in a little minute. That just makes the whole thing quite easy. That's the best way I've found so far. And we'll just wait on this, being a little bit slower today than usual, but that is fine. And again, it's fantastic, just the results you can get just from one prompt. So looking forward to this being done to show you. There we go. Just keep waiting on that. And if we explore the package, as we can see, stuff's already being generated. Got a few scripts made, got some SFX made, some icons. So it's perfect. It's working as expected. Okay. I guess while we wait, we can talk about the actual hackathon. So this week's theme is organization. So the tagline is build a spatial experience that helps people organize, plan, or be more productive. So a few different starter ideas I had when creating this presentation was, first one that sprung to my mind was spatial note-taking. I would love it if I was able to just pop on my specs, walk around my house and see different notes I'd placed on each wall. Maybe in the kitchen, it was reminding me, oh, got to get bread, got to get more milk. Maybe in the office, it was reminding me to water my plants, something like that. Because I don't always have my Post-it notes or whatever on me, but I often have my spectacles on me. So just being able to quickly place a spatial note, which stays in space until next time I come back, would be amazing. Another idea I had was a location-aware calendar. So I think this would be a really interesting one. So I could maybe open up specs and I could create a basic sort of note. Maybe next time I'm at the food shop to get X and Y, or next time I'm at my friend's house, remember to mention like their cat or something. And then as the GPS detected your right location, it could show these sort of notifications in front of you. I think that's the sort of tool I could really see myself using. I love those sort of spatially aware experiences. I think there's so much you can do with that. And let's just go back and, oh, I think we're almost there. As we can see, it's getting produced there. Looks quite nice with all the UI and everything. Yeah, should be there soon. Or like a Pomodoro timer. So for those of you that don't know, a Pomodoro timer is essentially it's like 5 minutes of work and then a 5-minute break in between. So I was thinking we could produce one of those, stick it on the desk, and then you can have a timer which works like that, which we will do this prompt again live once this one is produced, which I think is getting pretty close. So I see there's a question in the chat about can you use CLAD to detect real world objects? So CLAD is able to use things like the remote service gateway, which is how you can make AI requests within Lens Studio. So you could do this, so you could send a picture to Gemini, get Gemini to understand, where the carrot is within the lens and then show that. Within Preview, you are able to test these things. There's a bunch of really good simulated rooms. Again, they might not have the exact items you're looking for, but there's like a sunlit house, which is a bunch of different things. So you are able to see a bunch of items sort of in use there, which is good. There we go. As you can see, it's trying to use Leaf. So Leaf is the way it's able to test the lens. Now it's removing Leaf, but we should see this finishing up soon. Yeah, guess we can continue on from here. So how do you enter the hackathon? 3 easy steps. First, you just need to register for the hackathon, and you can do that by scanning the QR code here, which I see my webcam is covering in the YouTube live stream, or you can alternatively just go to the Lenslist website, and it'll make it quite obvious where you can register. Then you've just got to build the lens. That's time to submit. So what do you need to submit? First off, you need to submit a public link to your finished project repo. So I probably just put my project onto GitHub. So this is just all the files within your Lens Studio project. So that's what I would use. And then you also need a demo video. So walk through your lens, show off its key features, and talk about how CLAD was used. And just upload this to a video hosting service such as Google Drive or Dropbox, and you can share the video link there. And then the CLAD prompt log. So a document or transcript showing all of the prompts you've used to create a lens with CLAD. One of the easiest ways of doing this is just every time you send a new prompt, copying and pasting and popping it in a Google Doc, then just sending that off. And then a project description. So describe your lens, how it relates to the weekly theme and who it's for, how it would be used. And that's it. Just as four simple things to submit with your project. And that should be you. So let's see how this is. There we go. Okay, perfect. Looks like it is done. So we can refresh this here. And then it says it is 20 degrees today, which is correct. It is 20 degrees in Edinburgh, which is a great day here. Phenomenal. And then I should be able to hit show night. There we go. And it changes and it tells us, that it shows us it's going to be cloudy and a different temperature, all of that. And you might not be able to hear it, but it's got a really nice satisfying click every time you press this. So this isn't a very complex example at all. But what we can do is we can ask CLAD to test the button press. Maybe we've got a much more complex lens, then we're having to test some advanced interactions. But for now, we can just test the button press. So we can ask CLAD to use Leaf to test this. So use Leaf to test the button press is working as expected. Perfect. So you are able to write the individual Leaf test yourself, but I found CLAD to be really good at just parsing, your plain text, turning that into a Leaf test itself, and then running it. So we should see it opening up some of the Leaf dialog within Side Lens Studio to create our Leaf test. Again, it can take a little bit. So let's just go back and let's talk about the judging criteria until then. So submissions are based on 3 main categories. First one is your CLAD execution, and this is half of how the points are scored. So it's mostly just how meaningfully and effectively CLAD was used to build a project. So, are you thinking really outside the box? Is it impressive? And, the overall quality and ambition of what you're trying to build. So that's 50% of it. 25% is overall user experience. Is it clear, intuitive, and engaging are the main points. This is quite an important one in my opinion, as you can really separate lenses with just how easy they are to use and understand. If it's got massive walls of text, as soon as you open it, probably not going to be that good. But guiding the user through other things such as intuitive buttons, intuitive places to look, makes a lot of difference. So that's quite a good way of showing user experience. And then you've also got the creativity and usefulness. So that's 25% again. So this is just how original, thoughtful, and useful the idea is. Is it something I can actually see myself using on a daily basis? Is it best spatial? As there are some things which are, as much as spatial is great, some things can be better flat. So is it just a really useful spatial idea? Can I see myself using it every day? Does it fit the theme well as well? So that's something else to consider. And if you're looking for some, previous examples of what people have made using CLAD, I would highly recommend checking out r/spectacles. There are so many phenomenal creators there creating really cool things with CLAD. Just 2 shout outs at the top of my head. There was a really cool one yesterday by someone called Natasha. She made this really cool sort of tabletop board game using a bunch of Bitmojis and things like that using CLAD, and it looked phenomenal. It looked like it played really well as well. It's super cool to see. And there's also this super talented person called Pavlov who made a very cool lens using CLAD a little bit back to control a vector robot on his desk. And there's so much you can do with CLAD. So if you're struggling for inspiration, or maybe you just need like a helping hand along the way, got a question about CLAD, just throw it in r/spectacles and someone will always be happy to help. So, okay, back to this. It is opening leaf. You can see there. Hopefully you managed to see that. It was just testing it there. We can see at the top that it has tried, the weather day toggle test. That's passed. So that's perfect. So CLAD, Leaf even, for running unit tests is very useful. I would recommend incorporating these if you've got more complex lens. You've got quite a lot of things going on. So well worth using. Okay, so that did take a little bit longer than expected. So we can now go back and do the Pomodoro timer one as well, since we've got a little bit of time to spare. So I'm just going to close this. We can save the project, and then we can open up Lens Studio again. Perfect, and we can select specs. And these are the sample projects I was mentioning earlier once they load. There's a bunch here. So again, before even touching CLAD, if you're brand new to Lens Studio, it's worth just opening a few of these so you can understand how things within specs and Lens Studio works. The 2 I would recommend testing out are AI Playground, as this has a lot of the AI APIs to allow you to do things like live voice chat, generate images and 3D models using AI tools, or even just basic text generation. Really valuable, a lot you can learn from this one, or even just opening the essentials, playing around with it in the simulator, seeing how it all feels, and going from there. But anyway, let us do that Pomodoro timer example. So we'll open up a new project. Just wait on that, perfect. And then we'll save this once everything's done compiling, which should just be a second. There we go. And we'll just save this as Pomo. And then we can go back to cursor, and we'll just file, open folder, CLAD lenses, Pomo. There we go. And we can create a new agent. And then if we go back to our slides, there we go. We can just use that prompt. So build an interactive Pomodoro timer. Just open up here so I can copy and paste it across. It's a bit easier. So I think starting small with these sort of more basic lenses is a really good place to start. You're able to see quite quickly how it all works, and you can go from there, sort of build on it. As your knowledge of Lens Studio increases, you can create more and more interesting lenses. So let's paste that in there. So just build an interactive Pomodoro timer that the user can place on their desk. After 25 minutes, do a celebration VFX, set a timer of 5-minute break, have a start/pause button, make the user interface very clean and minimal. So I quite like that look personally. And we can just check everything is working. Yep, MCP is still running, plugins still all good. So perfect. Let's see how CLAD does this time. So yeah, in the meantime, does anyone in the chat have any questions while we wait on this CLAD run to finish? Yeah, well, I do think CLAD's one of those ones that the more you use, the more you sort of get used to it, and yeah, the more powerful you'll find it. Like I remember when I was seeing it being announced for the first time at AWE. I remember being in the room, seeing it announced, thinking, okay, that does look pretty cool, but I was reserving my judgment until I could test it for myself. So that night, went back to my hotel room, opened up my Mac, installed everything, and just got it to produce a basic, I think it was some sort of fishing lens. I was blown away. I'd not felt that like mind blown in such a long time. Opening up some software and it just exceeding my expectations. Didn't even begin to think I was going to be able to do things like the testing, creating the different meshes, all of that. So yeah, I hope when all of you guys try this out, if you've not already, you're also mind blown. It'd be super interesting to see how all of you find it. So feel free to be posting it in r/spectacles. People are always looking there, and there's so much interesting stuff to share. Perfect. So this should be starting to do its thing. We can see it's installing some Lens Studio packages, which should be good. Quite like it. You can always tap into it and have a look at how everything's going. You can see it's installing some like glitter celebration FFX. So earlier in the chat, a lot of different talk about the different AI models everyone prefers. Quite interesting to see a lot of anti-gravity, a lot of codecs. Not actually seeing anyone enjoying cursor, but yeah. Can you make an experience related to hands, like on a menu? Yeah, so I do agree that hand testing can be a little bit tricky to test within the editor. You can ask Leaf to produce some sort of tests for these to simulate the hands. It's not a perfect solution, but it can work. It can test some hand gestures. So yeah, I recommend just asking CLAD, producing Leaf tests to test some hand gestures and try from there. And then once you do have the Leaf test made, you're able to just run them from within Lens Studio. Don't have to ask CLAD every time. So that's how I'd get around the hand stuff. Yeah, so everyone's in the same boat for this hackathon because no one has the device yet since it's not out yet. So the ideal demo video is just a screen recording of the preview in Lens Studio. And yeah, maybe talking over it, explaining how it works, guiding us through the full thing, why you created it, how CLAD was useful, all of that. And then within Lens Studio, in case you weren't sure, or in case you weren't aware, you can slide these different things to make it bigger, so you can make it more full screen. And then at the top, you may want a different room or a different preview, depending on the sort of experience you're making. So at the top here, you can toggle a bunch of different previews. So like this one's evening outdoor. So if you're like creating an outdoor experience, you might prefer it there. So that's just something to keep in mind when developing it. Okay, so it looks like it's doing well. It's created some code already, adding the main controllers, all of that. So we should have a finished project quite soon, hopefully. There's also the Lens Studio API documentation, which is quite useful just for reading through, just to get yourself a bit more well-versed on what's possible within Lens Studio. A lot of different things there. So that's also worth keeping in mind. Yeah, so we'll just run this. It should be done soon. Out of curiosity, for those in the chat, what makes you pick something like Claude Code or Codex over Cursor, or even anti-gravity for that matter? Perfect. So it should be pretty close to being finished now, I expect. Yeah, so you can see using all different agents and tools the CLAD has. Here's one for capturing the runtime view. So it's able to just capture a screenshot, send it back, check everything looks good. And then we can do things like plan its next moves. Again, you can tap through, read the logs, actually see what it's doing. And we should be pretty much there. It looks like it's created the particles, as we can see. It's done things like it's added the world query module. It's got some scripts already produced. So hopefully not too much longer now, and we can see that. And I'll show you a basic example of just using one tool instead of the full prompt, and then we can just wrap it up there. Again, any questions, feel free to just keep chucking them in the chat. There we go. Yep. Looked like it was done, not quite. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Feels like sounds like a decent reason to just use CLAD then. It's often quite good to test them all, see what works best for all of you guys. Cursor is just the one I've started using at the start, and I guess just stuck with ever since for CLAD. No, so the lenses built in version 5.22 don't run on the 5th gen developer hardware. It is possible if you're to spend some time to sort of reverse engineer it to open up in an older version of Lens Studio, but as a whole, no. Things made using CLAD will only run on the next gen or in preview once they're out. Should almost be there. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So that's done. Let's try that out. Let's restart the preview. So I was doing that. I think there might be a small glitch there, which is fine. We can just open up the TypeScript logger. Okay, there we go. Got a log there. Paste those to CLAD. Hopefully it's able to fix those. Okay, a few more questions. When creating a lens for this, I would recommend, or you've got to stick to the community guidelines. So those can be viewed on, if you just search for on Google, like Lens Studio community guidelines, make sure your lens is following all of those rules. Yeah, interesting point about CLAD. CLAD even. Yep, that's fair enough. I've found Composer actually quite good to use in terms of token usage and everything. It feels quite good all around. No, I've not. I've not tried Google Anti-Gravity yet. It's one of the ones I keep meaning to try, but not quite given it a shot yet. Okay, still a few errors there. But in the meantime, I'd like to show you how you can just use one individual tool. So let's say instead of just using one prompt to create the full thing, you maybe just want to create one thing. So maybe I'm building a lens and I decide actually I need a mesh. So I can just do /build mesh, and you can describe what you want. So maybe make me a mesh of a 3D tomato. Often Pomodoro timers are represented by tomatoes. So you can just send this one individual command. Although for some of them, ensure you're signed into Lens Studio first. So once you see this little icon at the top, it means you are. But some things work a little bit better once you're signed in to Lens Studio, 3D being one of them. So if we go to the asset browser, actually don't make that massive, just normal asset browser, assets, we should see it almost there. So there we go. So about wait 30 seconds and it should be there. So this is the way I use CLAD the most actually, is just the individual agents to create little things from a lens instead of the full big flow. I find the full big flow with one prompt really good for getting started and creating basic prototypes. But after that, I much prefer using the individual agents to get things working there. So hopefully we can see this just about finishing. Again, 3D is one of the ones that blew me away the first time I tried it. There we go. Should just be getting ready to add it now. Actually, we should be able to see it in here. Oh, still generating, halfway there. This one. I think that depends what you mean about more than one user. Are you meaning like, you swap the specs with someone else, or are you meaning it's like shared online? Yeah, I think it depends what you mean there. Okay, hopefully this 3D model is ready soon. Yeah, I'm sure you could make a lens like that. As long as you sort of talked about the kind of the purpose of it and why you made it that way in your sort of description and everything when submitting it, it'd be quite interesting. Perfect. So we can now see our 3D mesh has been generated. We can go in here. We can press tomato. Press tomato. There we go. You can see in the bottom corner, make that a bit bigger so the webcam's comes in the way. 3D tomato model ready to just be dragged into our scene if we wanted to. So it's perfect for stuff like this. So I do see we are running out of time a little bit. A little bit annoying there was some errors there, but that can just happen. I'm sure after a few more times of explaining them to CLAD, they'd go away. The first lens, though, for example, that worked perfectly. So sometimes you can just get errors, but really just copying and pasting them, giving it to CLAD, that does fix it. So wouldn't worry too much about that one. Just focus on the weather one, which we did. Yeah, is there any more questions before we get wrapped up? And we do have a scannable QR code for the specs subreddit there, just in case you want to take a look. Well, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope this was useful. There's going to be one of these every week for the next 3 weeks as well. So there's going to be 3 more sessions of these. Yeah, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to see what is posted on the subreddit for all things CLAD Hackathon. And yeah, thank you all for showing up. Happy building.